Hey, here's Redeem Mechanic again. I made a video a few minutes ago about my my Astro version of the hub grappler tools, and I figured I'd just go, since I'm doing it, I might as well just show you how these things work in case you're curious. So the object of this kit is actually to do this work while it's still in the vehicle, but because it's kind of dark in that back area, and it's just easier to set it up this way, I'm going to go ahead. I went ahead and pulled the knuckle off so I can show you how to do it. But just imagine that it's still on the vehicle, and all you've done is you've lowered the, taken the lower ball joint out so that you can pull the axle out, and then you can just, from there, this is the same thing as if it was in the car. So what this kit does is it pushes the hub face out, and we're doing it. You can hear it. You can hear that nice rough bearing there. So what we're doing is we're taking this hub off right now. Instead of using a slide hammer, we're going to use this tool. The first thing we do is we figure out this inside silver circle. That's the part of the hub. We figure out which one of these fits, which is these ones. I don't know why they give you two of this one and they're thinner, but I just double them up because strength in numbers, I guess, whatever. So now we know that's the size. That's going to be our pulling washer. All right, so here we are. You can see you want it to get up against, to where it's up against that shelf on each side, and then you have your bar and you thread your rod through your threaded rod, and then you put the washers I was showing you, and then you put your puller nut. Okay, and then you want to put these little thumb screws in to lock everything in place so that these don't push outwards and allow these to slip off. Okay, all right, so you put a wrench on the back side, you put your 32 millimeter on the front, and you zap it out of there. I don't know how I'm going to do this one-handed. Let me try to hold it with my knee here, maybe. Yeah, that might work. There she is. All right, and she's off of there, and I've got lots of more slingshot ammo. And this hub, now you could do if you're saving the hub, you could do the trick where you heat this while spinning this, and this will just drop right off. Or you could do the old school way of just trying to grind along here and break the race without damaging the hub. I kind of like the heat trick. It doesn't do anything to the hub. The heat basically focuses just on the race, and it drops right off. But on this vehicle, I don't have to deal with it, because the only way I could get this bearing, it came with a hub. It was a bearing with hub, but it wasn't an assembled bearing with hub. So I don't have to play with that today. All right, so now we're done with that kit. We can put it away. That's all I needed it for today. And we'll do the rest of the bearing using this kit. So the first thing we're going to need to do is pry this little snap ring out of the way. I don't know if you guys can see that. See that little there? This is the style that Ford loves to use, where they don't even use you can't use snap ring pliers. You got to use a pick or something to just get that little thing out of there. Pop it off. All right, so just pry that out of there. Always a fight. I'm gonna need two hands for that. All right, so the next step is you want to figure out which one of these fits on the outside where it'll rest up against a solid edge. You don't want to get one that rests on a tapered edge. Like this one here actually would go over, but it's going to end up going down into a taper area, and it'll get stuck there. And that's why it looks like this on that side, because that happened to be once on a Honda. But so you don't want to have it to where it can get wedged in place. All right, so you find one like this where it's going to sit, and it's going to hit this outside edge here, and there's no way it's going to be able to be forced over the hub. But it can't be like this one, where this fits perfectly on the edge, but it's just slightly smaller in diameter than the housing, so the bearing would actually force itself into here, and the bearing would get stuck in this thing. So got to find that perfect one. Then you flip your thing over, or if it's on the car, you just look around the backside and you figure out what spacer you're going to put in here. So there we go. That's a nice size right there. All right, that's going to be our puller. Next, you grab whichever one of these fits the cup you picked, so it sits right on top of it, and you start assembling everything together. Put your cup over the top. Put your faceplate over the cup. Then you run your threaded rod through that whole thing. Right. And then I'm gonna need 2 hands, but I'm gonna flip this over. I'm gonna put that my puller cone and the nut on it. Okay, so everything's centered, ready to go. And we're gonna do the same thing. We've got a 32mm up top and a 32mm wrench, or in my case, my 32 is at the other shop, so I'm just using an 1 5/16 inch, which is not exactly the best fit, but hey, it'll work for today. And again, I'm gonna try to hold this with my knee, and you start forcing it out. This one's in here pretty tight, so figured I'd stop, let my air compressor catch up for a minute, but you can see it's pushing it out of there. Just ran out of air pressure. And she's out of there. I turned my compressor off, let it cool down for a little bit. Definitely took a lot of pressure on this one. You could see there's a lot of, it was fighting against some corrosion and stuff. But we'll get that all cleaned up before we push the new one in. All right. So I got a new bearing and we're ready to put it back in. Now this one doesn't have the magnetic sensor in it, so it doesn't matter which way it goes in. Other vehicles, you need to make sure you press in the correct side, but I don't have to deal with that. So get that in there, pick a cone that is going to fit exactly on the outside edge. You want it to be to where it's touching the outer race, but it's not bigger than the whole overall bearing. This one fits perfectly. So that's going to be my pusher cone. Then on the back side, you need one that will go and fit over that like that. So that's going to be my puller cone. It's going to pull the bearing into the thing. All right, and then we do our threaded rod through the whole assembly again, and I'll crank it all up. All right, so get everything centered up, locked in place. They give you a collar for when you need a little bit of extra length. So we're all set up. Put some assembly lube on the inside of that hub after I cleaned it to help lubricate things as it goes together. And here we go. She's all set. Don't forget to put in your new snap ring. All right, so you can also use it to push the hub face on like I have here. But just a note, you want to make sure that you don't push it too hard. Like run it in, but don't let it hit bottom. You can, because you want to get the final torque when you torque your axle nut, so that you don't over tighten this bearing here. So we get the proper preload on the bearing. Okay, so you can use this to pull it in, but stop it before it completely stops. If you go too far and it bottoms out on you, you can use your hub puller kit and just pull a face out a tiny bit, because when it gets set together, you want it to be set together using the torque on the axle nut. Okay, and there she is, all back together. Torques the nut down to, for this vehicle, it was 222 foot-pounds, and you can torque these by just taking a steel punch, drop it down into the vanes with the caliper in place, and that will hold no problem at all, no damage. And you can torque it in the air instead of having to put the wheel on with the center cap out and put it on the ground and all that nonsense. And she's all set to go.